Hey guys, I'm Junior and welcome back to my world. So today's session is all about the thorax or the chest. But for the most part, we are going to focus on the thoracic wall or the thoracic cage. So without further ado, let's get into the video. But before doing that, you all know the culture. Click on the subscribe button, turn on the bell notification, like, comment and share. Let's get in. Okay guys, so welcome back. So the thorax, which is also known as the chest region, is like a region on its own, just like other regions in relation to gross anatomy, like the upper limb, the lower limb, the head, the neck, the abdomen, etc. It's also a region on its own, formed as a result of the thoracic cage or the wall, which is an osteocartilaginous cage. So meaning you have the bones and the cartilages that comes together to form the cage itself. So the region is formed as a result of the cage plus your viscera or internal organs within the thoracic cavity. So this thoracic cage or wall is bounded by bones and cartilages. So anteriorly, it is bounded by the sternum as well as the costal cartilages. And posteriorly, or at the back of the thorax, it is bounded by the thoracic spine as well as a fraction of the ribs, most at the posterior aspect, very close to the spine. Then on each side, that's at the lateral aspect, it is bounded by the same ribs, but the ribs that are not at the posterior aspect, those are at the lateral aspect, because the rib is somehow circular in relation to the shape. Okay, so posteriorly is both by the fraction of the ribs itself as well as the thoracic spine, anteriorly by the sternum and the costal cartilages, and on each side or laterally by the same fraction of the rib, but most at the lateral aspect. So basically, in relation to the thorax or the chest, there is an opening or a space through which structures enters only the thorax, which is known as the inlet of the thorax or the superior thoracic aperture. So just like the inlet of the axilla, through which the axillary artery as well as the brachial plexus enters through the axilla to supply the whole of the upper limb. So that's the same as the inlet of the thorax. So most of these structures enters and leave the thorax through this inlet or opening. So for the space or the opening, you need to know the contents or the structures that enter and leave the thorax through this opening. So these structures that enter the thorax through this opening includes the esophagus, you have the trachea, and also your veins, okay, that more or less receives the oxygenated blood from the upper limb. Then also structures that moves out are like branches of the arch of the aorta, like the same right and the left subclavian artery and the common carotid artery. So these structures are very, very important for you to know. Just like the inlet of the thorax, you also have the outlet of the thorax or the inferior thoracic aperture, through which structures like the esophagus passes through to reach the abdomen. So it is also like a space, just like the inlet of the thorax. Okay, so you need to know the boundaries, mostly of bones and the cartilage that bounds the space itself. Okay, but the outlet is somehow different as opposed to the inlet of the thorax in a way that it is not just open like that. It is somehow being occupied by a muscle known as the diaphragm, which is an inspiratory muscle that helps in ventilation. But even though it is being occupied by this diaphragm, so meaning the space is not just open like that to allow stuff to move out of the thorax and reaches the abdomen. It is closed by the diaphragm. But this diaphragm consists of hiati, that's the plural form of hiatus, which is a singular. They are more or less like openings which allows for the passage of these structures. Okay, so for example, you have the esophageal hiatus or opening to allow for the passage of the esophagus. And you also need to understand the diaphragm as a whole because it's a muscle, and for each muscle you all know from upper and the lower limb, you need to know its origin, insertion, action, and innervation. Okay, so know the origin, know the action, which is more or less inspiration, then know the innervation, mostly by the phrenic nerve. So know all of those stuff. They are very, very. So from the inlet and the outside of the thorax, you also need to understand the intercostal spaces. So inter means between, and costal is a term somehow related to your ribs. So now the intercostal space is like a space between the ribs. Okay, so you have the first, second, third, and so on and so forth. So they are very, very important for you to understand. So now at the anterior aspect of the thorax itself, you have 9 intercostal space, and at the posterior aspect, you have 11. So now this intercostal space is studied under 3 aspects. Okay, so know the intercostal muscles, the intercostal vessels, that's the arteries and veins, and the intercostal nerves. So in relation to your intercostal muscles, they are like muscles that exert some force on the thoracic cage of the wall in order to enhance ventilation. That's inspiration and expiration. So these muscles are very, very important together with your accessory muscles like your scalene muscles, etc. So these principal intercostal muscles are the external intercostal, which more or less helps in inspiration together with the diaphragm. We have the internal intercostal muscles, which helps in expiration together with muscles like the transversus thoracic muscle. So they are like group of muscles that consist of, you have the sternocossalis, subcossalis, and the inner intercostal muscles. So these muscles are just like names, but they are very, very important in a way. You need to know the origin, you need to know the insertion, the action. And now for the innervation for these muscles, they are more or less like your intercostal nerves, okay? But now, since you have the first, second, third intercostal spaces and so on and so forth, so the nerve, that's the intercostal nerve at the level of the first intercostal space, is the first intercostal nerve. So if you have, for example, all of these 3 sets of muscles, the external intercostal, internal, and the transversal thoracic muscle, if they are the first intercostal space, meaning the innervation is the first intercostal nerves. Okay. From the musculature, you also need to know the vasculature. That's the arteries and the veins around the intercostal spaces. Okay. So now, at the anterior aspect of the thorax, you have 9 intercostal spaces, and at the posterior aspect, you have 11. So in relation to the arteries, you have the anterior and the posterior intercostal arteries. So now for the anterior intercostal arteries, since you have 9 spaces and each space consists of 2 anterior intercostal arteries, so meaning you have 18 at the anterior aspect. So now the upper 6 pair are like branches of the internal thoracic artery or internal mammary artery, which is like a branch of the first part of the subclavian artery. Okay, lower 3 pair that forms the 9th pair, the anterior aspect, are like branches of the musculophrenic artery, and the musculophrenic artery is like a continuation of the internal mammary artery. Okay, so as the internal thoracic artery is descending inferiorly, it gives off these branches, musculophrenic. So musculophrenic for more or less the diaphragm, okay, as well as the phrenic nerve that innervates the diaphragm. So it is that musculophrenic artery that give off these branches, these lower 3 branches, to form another part of the anterior intercostal artery. So on the contrary, at the posterior aspect of the thorax, you have 11 intercostal spaces, and each space accommodates 1 posterior intercostal artery. So meaning you have 11 posterior intercostal artery. So now the first 2 emerge from the superior intercostal artery, which is a branch of the costocervical trunk. And the costocervical trunk is a branch of the second part of the subclavian artery. So it is very, very important for you to understand. Then the remaining 9 are like branches of the descending thoracic aorta. So as the arch of the aorta is descending inferiorly and reaches at the level of the thorax, it gives us these branches, these lower 9 posterior intercostal artery to supply structures around the intercostal space. Now in relation to the veins at the anterior and the posterior aspect, now for the anterior aspects are more or less like the vena comitatis. So they are like accompanying veins of the anterior intercostal arteries. Okay, so they are very, very easy for you to understand. Now at the posterior aspect, you also have the intercostal veins. That's the posterior intercostal veins. And since you have 11 spaces and each space consists of 1 posterior intercostal vein, so meaning you have 11 of these veins. But now they are divided into 2 aspects. You have the right and the left. So for the right posterior intercostal veins, the first drains its content into the right innominate or brachiocephalic vein. Then the second, third, and the fourth, they fuse to form a trunk known as the superior intercostal vein, which drains its content into the azygos vein. So it's like a tributary that drains its content into the azygos vein. Then the remaining also drain their content into the azygos vein. Now at the left, you also have the same posterior intercostal veins. Okay, but the difference is based on the location. So the first left posterior intercostal vein also drains its content into the left brachiocephalic vein, and the second, third, and fourth also fuse to form the left superior intercostal vein. But now for the left superior intercostal vein, it does not drain its contents into the azygos vein. So instead, it drains its contents into the same left brachiocephalic vein. Then the fifth, sixth, seventh, and the eighth forms the superior hemiazygos vein, which is a tributary of the azygos vein. Then the remaining and the subcostal vein also forms the hemiazygos vein, but now the inferior or accessory hemiazygos vein, which drains its contents into the azygos vein. To form the vasculature, you also need to know the nerve supply to these structures around the intercostal spaces. So more or less, you need to know the intercostal nerves. Okay, so these intercostal nerves are like, continuation of the ventral rami of your thoracic spinal nerve. So just like the brachial plexus, okay, which is formed as a result of the continuation of the ventral rami of your spinal nerve C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. So that's the same. So these nerves emerge as a result of the continuation of your ventral rami. So ventral anterior rami is like the plural for ramus, which means branch. Okay, so it is the anterior branch that continues to form these intercostal nerves. So it is very, very important for you to know the cause or the pathway of this nerve. So thank you very much, guys, for watching this amazing video. I guess these are like the basics you need to know about the thoracic cage or the wall. So in relation to the same thorax itself or the chest, you have other topics. Okay, it is not just the thoracic cage or the wall. You have topics like the pleura, which you need to know, the lungs, the heart, and other structures around the mediastinum. So today is more or less all about the thoracic cage or the wall. So I've tried as much as possible today for me to shorten the length of the video, because I guess the previous videos are like 20, 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so I guess it is somehow boring. So I've tried today to more or less shorten the length of the video. So thank you guys again, and you all know the culture. Click on the subscribe button, turn on the bell notification, like, comment, and share. Peace, and see you in the next video.